Welcome to another edition of the Dakotan's Election Central, where we are continuing our comprehensive coverage of the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. I am Jonathan Starr. Today we are joined by one of the candidates for North Dakota Superintendent of Public Instruction, or DPI, James Bartlett. I was going to say James and then Jim, and I messed it all up. But it's good to have you today, Jim.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for making the drive. I'm sure you've been driving all over the state.
Yes, yeah, but this was a nice drive, only an hour and a half.
That's not so bad. So where are you located at?
In Bottineau. We have a small farm 2 miles south of the Canadian border and a store right next to the Quilt Inn at the Lake Metigoshe.
And so that makes everywhere in North Dakota a pretty far drive.
Yeah. I have a pattern now, so I just stay wherever I am in the state until the last minute and then head home and drive through the night, take a nap, and get home in the morning and sleep in.
So you don't get much sleep then? You've been getting enough?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Well, we like to start these off a little bit easy. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your history.
Yes, I taught engineering at NDSU for 17 years. I directed the North Dakota Homeschool Association for 6 years, and then we developed the farm after that. But a relevant point of history is in 1983, I was living with pastors at Purdue University when they were traveling to North Dakota to fight the DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, regarding the compulsory school laws as applied to the homeschoolers and the Christian schools. And so during that time, I had just become a Christian and started studying how the Bible applies to various things, and also learned the worldview topics, how those were playing into education and how the Christians were concerned about what's happening in education and have been ever since.
Right.
And we homeschooled our own kids, and lots to say.
Yeah, so you homeschooled your own kids. How important do you think homeschooling is?
Say that again?
How important do you think homeschooling is?
Yeah, I always have said and still say that it's not where the kids learn that's so important, it's what they learn.
Okay.
And so there's a long list of reasons why people are choosing homeschool. I always thought the best one would be they read it in the Bible and they should do that, but it's hardly ever that. It's usually academics or morals, or my kid got hit with another kid's book or something like that,
right?
Where they actually wake up and see the curriculum, or like what I saw from Bismarck, learning a mythology in the schools.
Interesting.
People start seeing, hey, we really shouldn't be doing this to our kids. There's a long list of reasons we can go into, but there's people have increased homeschooling. I think it's gone up to 16% from 3% since COVID, because people started seeing what the kids were actually learning. And we can expose that pretty easily. I've been showing that to people for a long time.
At what point did you decide that you were going to run for this office? Yeah,
I think it was kind of in January this year. I had thought about running for office, one of the either Senate or representative in our district. And I had done that in 2008 for Senate. We did not get it. And then someone mentioned how someone should challenge the DPI superintendent because of the downgrade in the testing scores and academics generally, as well as the morals and all the problems that are in the public school are just getting worse under the current system and philosophies that are happening. So as soon as I heard that, it's like, okay, wow, that'd be fun, because I already knew the problem, I already knew the solution, and we got the goods on that topic. Yeah.
So January, you just kind of decide. So kind of a late bloomer. Sometimes people have this mapped out for a year or two, and
Yeah. I've always been a late bloomer. I was younger when I was in grade school too.
Yeah. There you go. So more pertinent to this topic, what are some of the challenges that you see facing education in North Dakota?
The biggest problem to solve is the removal of false philosophies.
Okay.
And that requires understanding what they are. Okay, there's 6 of them in the major categories. I'll explain in a second. But one of the things that undermine even knowing that they're there is the belief that what is taught in public schools is religiously neutral. Because if you believe it's all neutral, then there's nothing to see here. There's no problem with philosophy. We'll just get onto the test scores, or get onto the bad books in the library, or we'll get into the bullying or all the other issues. But really the biggest problem is identifying and then removing the false philosophies in those people and organizations promoting them.
Okay.
So the 3 main ones are Marxism, secular humanism, and postmodernism. And those are, each one of those have 10 different aspects. So we're going to explain a little bit more.
Yeah, let's dive into this. Let's go.
Yeah,
This is getting interesting.
You bet. So the secular humanism, its main document is the Humanist Manifesto. John Dewey signed that in 1933, as well as others, in a deliberate plan to take secular humanism as a religion through the public schools and colleges, starting with Columbia University. And I've got the reference here in the pile somewhere of a book that references how they plan to do that. And they've done it perfectly. They really should get an award, except they're not living anymore, because it's amazing. We have completely imbibed atheism, naturalism, materialism, moral relativism, evolution, monism, legal positivism, social progress, and the other aspects. And so each one of those play out in the curriculum.
Okay.
And so, for instance, in Bottineau a couple of days ago, as well as in other towns, they're using a curriculum that's Amplify for grade K to 5. And so one of the school board members in Towner noticed some funny teaching about colonialism and patriarchal societies, and really a worldview topic. And so he showed it to me, and then I went to Bottineau to look at some things myself to see the curriculum. And then we found out, from the back of the book or in the front of the book, a picture of the deliberate incorporation of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the entire reading curriculum for K through 5. And it's like, okay, this is a philosophy. The kids know that it's bad. The teachers, a lot of them know that it's not good. And yet it's fully imbibed, paid for by the taxpayers of North Dakota, and wasting everybody's time. But worse than that, it's a false philosophy that's being taught. It's part of these that we're talking about. But the one thing in just the secularism category that I often go to is pointing out morals.
Right.
North Dakota Constitution expects that the schools will be teaching students morals, right? So morals, in 1889, when the North Dakota Constitution was ratified, they were thinking things like Noah Webster's dictionary in 1828. He was the American founder of education and scholarship, wrote the original dictionary, 1828, for Americans. And if you look at the definition of morals, it's basically the ability to discern good and evil. And then if you look up good, look up evil, you've got a long list of scripture under each one. So the definitions for morals in North Dakota come from scripture. So we have a basis in Christianity that we can't deny. And there's many other ways to show that. The fact that they used to post the 10 Commandments on the wall in the schools all the time was a little bit more evidence of that. So anyway, so the biggest issue that we have to deal with is probably explaining what I just said, but basically showing that we have a religion in the public school now. And the idea, if you look at the religion based on the functional definition of a religion, and there's a good book to address that called Clergy in the Classroom by David Noble. And that one is authoritative, got all the references that you need to prove that there is a religion allowed and fully operating in the public schools right now. So if there's a complaint against Christianity, well, we already have a religion in the public schools. So you can't have nothing. And that idea of religious neutrality is a myth. So there's a couple of the big ideas. So then those big ideas, some people will argue those are not practical. Those are adult problems. Those aren't what kids need to know. Yeah, they do. And it's embedded throughout the whole curriculum, for one thing. And so you're teaching these kids all the other bad philosophies at grade kindergarten through 5 in reading. So it's a kind of a lame excuse to be able to say that we don't need to address the adult problems in the children's classrooms. They already do. And so the solution to the math or the reading, reading, for example, a girl that works with us, she was explaining their reading club in Bottineau. And it's like, great idea. To encourage kids to read more and a challenge and a little competition. It's like, what books are they having you read? And a bunch of garbage books. And so I gave her a list of books that they should consider. Yeah. And it's like, why are we reading garbage books? Mm-hmm. I mean, and then we want to look at the test scores for reading and think, hey, we're doing great on reading or we're doing rotten on reading. All those test scores have been going down, even with the bad books and the bad philosophies. It's still going down.
So when you say garbage books, is it just because of the references that are made in the books, or they just are not?
Yeah, well,
challenging.
Here's one example.
Okay.
It's called Everything Mythology National Graphic Kids.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, if you look at my tags here, you'll find that it equates Christianity with other religions and other myths. And so I think you could come out of this believing that Christianity is a myth.
Is a myth.
And that's exactly what I hear from the transgender activists and others that email me or talk to me and say that, hey, you can't propagate your myth in the public schools.
Wow.
And it's like, well, North Dakota is a Christian-based state.
Right, yeah.
So, it's just history. But they have a reason not to want history, you know that, right? It's part of postmodernism, their history view is historical revisionism. So that's really convenient. So if you want to be able to say, hey, let's, that Constitution is old.
Right.
We need to evolve because Darwin and social evolution. Therefore, that Constitution is old. Society has moved on. Look at all the technology we have, etc. And you end up with not using the Constitution for education or property taxes or any other topic. They just make it up as they go because maybe a lot of folks went to public school.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yep.
I want to talk on one thing. The religion neutrality is a myth. And so religion is an interesting topic. Anytime you step into that, it's like politics, and we're already stepped into politics. So that's divisive enough. We can step into religion too. Schools are definitely teaching something, and there's definitely groups that are forming and stuff like that promote the different communities and stuff like that. But it tends to be, and we've heard it. I've heard backlash, some backlash from local school districts about like Christian groups getting together and stuff like that. But then there's allowance for other groups. Is this one of the concerns that you have when you're talking about religion neutrality as a myth? That there's stuff that's being pushed down the ears of our kids?
Well, I know that there's 5 bad philosophies being pressed down on the kids right now in all the different arrangements. And so what we're seeing in the schools is a Marxist view of the separation of church and state. And so literally what that means is that the state owns the children.
Okay.
And that Christians should be silent.
And that's not healthy.
Yeah. Okay, the Christians are the ones that, at least acknowledge Almighty God in the North Dakota Constitution, and then they, expected morals, etc. And so, okay, well, how did that happen? And we know, but so then that connects to the idea of the neutrality idea, because there is, in Christian thought, there is no neutrality. It's either good or evil, and if you can't tell the difference because you believe in moral relativism, you got a problem on your hand.
Right.
Because nobody knows what's right and wrong.
So is Christianity, do you feel like Christianity specifically is targeted?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, above other religions. Not even talking about like agendas, just religions in general.
Yeah. By nature, that's the system. You bet. All of the false philosophies deny the God of the Lord Jesus Christ, and they're against Him, right? So that's it's all the philosophies, whether we talk about the dualism or statism, etc., assume that there's no God. Atheism is assumed. There is no spirit in man, and there's no God, and therefore outside forces need to mold everybody. So you got to be carefully managing emotions. So when kids come to school, you ask them, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? And everybody feels like they're wondering why they're asking me about my feelings every day, and I feel bad because they're asking me.
I must feel bad.
And so that's the social emotional learning aspect. It's crazy. But if you learn a little bit about the other views on sociology and psychology, Advancing the Kingdom by Schanzenbach is my favorite book on that topic. And it's easy to see. It just takes a little bit of study. And I think probably my job is, if I get in a DPI position, is going to be to try to help people understand what is actually happening, because as soon as they know, they won't want it.
Right. Yeah, and that's basically my next question. Like, we see this, you have presented the problem that we can see, and how does it get resolved in North Dakota schools?
You bet. So the way I begin explaining it is, in a Christian view, parents are in control of the education of their children. God owns the children, and the parents are stewards over the children. And so with that in mind, you visit each school to start with and have the parents sit there in front of a blackboard, and right on the top of the back blackboard, complete parental control. And then on the left of the board, sketch out what that group thinks that the strategic vision should be for that school and some goals, and then start using lean accounting is one way to say it, where you basically think of what the parents want to get out of that educational institution as the value to add, and then list that. And so you could, well, it could be a certain curriculum or certain books or certain, grades in math, or it could be, okay, we want, $50,000 to go into anti-realism for the transgender people. Okay, let's put that on this balance sheet or spreadsheet so we can see exactly what they want. And then match that underneath the North Dakota Constitution's requirements for morals and see what comes out of that. So that's a strict strategy to be able to do that. And so we've been encouraging the forming of school boards, I call them advanced school boards around the state, to be able to practice doing these things, as well as work with parents separately to lay that out separately. So that's the strategy in one sense. In a bigger picture, the people that are just in the schools, and many teachers are, and I completely understand if you don't understand what I'm saying, okay? NDSU, I wrote a paper. It took me 3 years to write a paper called Secularization by the Christian Educator. And so it was me analyzing my own position, thinking, me, Christian, created and led a Christian faculty and staff group at NDSU, as well as the married couples, and doing a lot of Christian things on campus. Am I actually helping the secular agenda and Marxist agenda and postmodern agenda more than I am helping Christianity because I'm there?
Okay.
And the answer after 3 years is yes, for sure, no question about it. And that's how it has been propagated throughout history, is so that the good people, the Christians, are duped. They don't understand that they are helping another religion.
When you realized that, did that motivate a decision to leave the university?
Yes, absolutely. It's in my, for sure. Yeah, and that's why we left and started the farm. And I was involved after that, helping start Christian colleges, ran the North Dakota Homeschool Association, and also helped start a Christian school in Arizona. Yeah.
I think it's also interesting. What kind of farm do you run?
It's a small, diversified farm. So we have a raw milk dairy, and then we've got grass-fed beef and pastured broiler chickens and layer hens. And my son's wife does kombucha and granola and a few other things like that. We have the store. We're still growing, pretty small.
So, like, everything that you do on that farm, other than the kids, which North Dakota's made up a lot of that grow up on farms, is being lost through schools. Schools don't really promote that much.
Exactly. Yeah, it's our food is too healthy to be allowed in the schools.
Okay. So is that something that that's a ridiculous statement, but it's true? Food is too heavy.
USDA needs some work too, as well as the North Dakota Department of Ag.
You might have to move on to that next. But is that something that needs to be revamped as well, or that you see
absolutely
having a goal for?
Kids are asking me, Dr. Bartlett, if you get into DPI, can you also fix the food? So at least I'm sure we can do something about that.
Yeah, right. But even some of the the health training. So one of the questions I have is technology. How do schools adapt to the technology that is constantly evolving?
Yes, awesome question. Okay. You bet.
And so I want you to answer that question, but then after that, I have one that also I want to flip the script on that.
You bet. First of all, in 1954, Gordon Clark wrote a book on the philosophy of education. And at that time, there was a big discussion about how much technical training do we bring into childhood education, because anything that's brought in technically is excluding the real education. There's a difference between training and education. Education forms a person so that they understand the times, understand history, know their place in the history, have a vision for their life and calling, and many things that aren't being done today. And so with the thought that we want to be careful not to replace real education with technical training, then we can move on and say, tools are good. Whatever tools we have to make things more efficient or learn typing quicker, or we can talk about AI. There's also bad aspects of technology. So with the cell phones, there's a lot of schools have stopped allowing cell phones around the schools because of the bullying issue or other things. So there's ways to control that, or have filters on phones and all that kind of thing. And then there's an agenda in some of these technologies. Oh, it's been a long time since I've read those books, but yeah, there's a lot of philosophies around technology, especially like AI would be one today, right? I'm talking about secular humanism, and maybe that's really too old, because now we have, what's it called, transhumanism.
Okay.
Right. So people, first of all, we started out with the assumption that there's no God, no spirit in man. Now we're assuming everything's biological, chemical, and that now man can connect to machines, and therefore AI can run you and design you and run the future. And so it's like we're being groomed for that.
So Neuralink, that deal that Elon Musk has, there's a guy that's on that's actually like able to live a little bit through that.
Yeah, I've heard just a little bit about that too.
Yeah. So it's really crazy scary.
It is very. Yep. So the transhumanism is another philosophy, but it is in the same category as humanism with the technology applied. It's interesting science.
Yeah.
But all the way along, you have to not lose the morals.
That's the part that needs to be talked about as well. So we're very aware of technology that's evolving in the question of how do we integrate that into studies and how do we integrate that into the classrooms and all those great things.
I can give you ideas. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Give us a couple ideas on that.
Yeah. Well, right now, like we use it on the farm with in marketing. So if we want to try to get some ideas on how we should write something up, we can do a little use ChatGPT or something. Get some ideas. Get going in the right direction. We always have to rewrite it, and sometimes it's actually harder to rewrite it after you hear something from ChatGPT. But we use that occasionally. Or in accounting, we use Odoo Accounting, and that's got the AI built in, so we can scan receipts and bring it in quickly. But still, you got to review it and make sure it does it right. And so and then for artwork, I haven't done as much with that, but yeah, I think all those tools are great to the extent they're actually helpful, like toward business. And then of course in the schools, how do we want to help people read? It may be better to have a book in many cases than have a technology that's reading it to you or things like that. So I think we lose it if we rely too much on technology.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have lost handwriting.
Yeah, right, exactly. Won't be able to read history.
Yeah, and you go and you throw the script back to people that were probably 70s and before, and some of the cursive and the handwriting they have is pretty amazing. It's magnificent, and then you go after that, and it's definitely something that's learned. I mean, it was learned back then, but it doesn't come naturally because, oh, wow, over time I just developed this. It's like if you want nice handwriting, you have to sit down and decide that now. That's
a good point. You bet.
Now, typewriting comes natural. That was something that they had to learn back then. That's something that everybody kind of gets familiar. So we understand the technology that's evolving, right? But then it kind of asked you about your farm. What about the flip side? The part where people are, if you ask me to go survive a day on my own outside, maybe I can't do that anymore because I am not connected to technology. Is this a concern that the schools should have?
In the North Dakota Constitution, it does talk about uses the word practicable. And I think the intention there is, things that are practical, things that you can actually use. So whether it's making change or it's being able to fix your tire, or it's able to read and write and do those things would be natural, and of course in the lower grades. And so, could you restate your question?
Yeah. So is it a concern for the schools of North Dakota of implementing some of those things that are more, as you said, stated, practical or survival or in that category rather than technology?
Yes, I think it's a good thing. Personally, first of all, I'll think about it for the schools in a second. I think people, we do farm tours every summer. So we have kids come over and they learn how to milk a cow and learn where their food comes from. It's also important for people to know that perhaps it could be necessary again. I don't know that. I'm not really a prepper, but I know people that are. And so knowing how to survive without the technology would be helpful. We hear of the threat of EMPs and stuff. So all of a sudden, if the power went out and we have no power, that would be interesting. How are we gonna live?
I'd be going to Botno. Because there's a farm up there.
Yes,
Bartlett Farms. Everybody would be there.
Yeah, well, we got a great plan to put you to work. We need a lot more help right now. So So I think those things are very helpful, and actually I think they're grounding in a way. So like we have a girl just starting working on a farm, and because she's been working in the store, and so yeah, her parents think it's great for her to have a hands-on experience and being able to, get dirty and do stuff around animals, because animals don't always do what you want and they make a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a interesting dilemma for sure that we face. You mentioned a little bit about phones potentially being limited in schools now, and I think that brings the deal of like even transparency and communication. And I know that there's good systems that the schools have for communicating to the parents and stuff like that, but sometimes it feels like there are things that are going on in the schools that aren't always completely transparent. An example, and I've picked on them a lot, so sorry, Minot School Board, but they hold their school board meeting at 4:00, which is a trend around the state. So it's just the accessibility of some of those meetings, people having to literally take time off work, and we all hide behind the idea that it's live streamed, so it's accessible, but still it takes time to listen to that, and sometimes that can be hard. So is there enough accessibility and enough communication in those key roles where people would have a voice right now in the schools? And if not, what can we do to change that?
Yeah, there is not. I've heard many school board people and parents say that they don't have a voice. And so just like 2 days ago, Towner, school board member, felt that they were railroaded down with the curriculum, the Amplify curriculum that has the diversity, equity, inclusion in it. And we've heard that in many places.
Yeah.
So, but now the bigger picture there, actually there's several bigger pictures.
Let's paint them all.
But one of them is that we have Marxist organizations running things.
Okay.
4 of them.
Okay.
DPI.
Okay.
The School Board Association.
Okay.
North Dakota Center for Education Leadership trains the superintendents. And did I miss one? Oh, the Teachers Union. And so, yeah, that would be a problem. And also why we cannot get things done. So that things are not going to be changed unless those organizations are removed from their positions of authority and power and control in the state, because they are controlling things. And I hear even friendly school board members addressing their friends on the school board saying that they've changed after they got the training from the School Board Association. And it's like, to me, it's no surprise at all, because we've seen this stuff all the time. This is how it works. Mm-hmm. And that's how the teachers got trained at teachers' colleges. That's what they're doing with some of the continuing education credits, all kinds of things. But now, why does that make sense to them? Well, it makes sense to them because they believe in evolution, right? So if you evolve and you want the next generation to evolve faster, then you want to cut off the morals, the truths, what was learned in the past generations to allow the next generation to move on faster, social evolution. So then you have things like, I think it was Grand Forks and other places where the parents are not kept informed about the transgender transitioning and things like that, because that would be against their religion to tell the parents, because they are working on an evolving society.
That's not right.
No. Well, how do you know it's not right? Because there is a standard of right and wrong, and it's embedded in the 10 Commandments, always has been.
All right, let's talk about the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
You have received some flack for your stand on the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, well, it's really it's funny in my view, because there's no question about who wrote them or the authority that they have.
Right.
But the funny thing to me is that people somehow are not aware that they can be used, actually, and not just as a historical document or just not in social studies class, but they can be actually used to teach thou shalt not kill, and that by extension, if you understand that the 10 Commandments are the summary of all the other aspects of Scripture, then you can use scriptures like thou shalt not kill to mean not also include don't hurt people, don't bully, etc. Yeah. And so when you train children, you can be teaching them that there is a God, that there is a spirit in man, and that it matters what you do. You're going to be judged for good or evil based on what you do.
So you've received flack on this from other candidates, such as Kristen Baszler, and I think even Jason Heitkamp has said some things about this as well. You've said Christians would be the best religion to be in control. We're taught to be kind and generous to help others and help them, which I think ties into the 10 Commandments. And there was another quote, and I had it in my notes somewhere, and I can't find it. but it was basically stating along the lines that there's a view that does feel that the Ten Commandments do not belong in schools because of the Constitution. What is your response to people that have that point of view or have a question about that?
You bet. Yeah, we can't explain it all. First of all, this is a copy of the Ten Commandments that was in public schools around North Dakota.
Okay.
Designed by the NDSU Department of Agriculture, and it was at the time called the North Dakota College of Agriculture, I think before 1965.
Okay.
And so it's NDSU in modern day words. So it's the full Ten Commandments. It was on every wall in North Dakota. And so at that time, apparently, they didn't know that it was a problem with separation of church and state and violating the U.S. Constitution. Or could it be that they did know what was going on? Because the U.S. Constitution says that Congress should not be establishing a religion for imposing it upon everybody on the whole country, like a given denomination. And so the Ten Commandments are not sectarian. It's like it's not per one denomination. It's just in the scriptures. And so then you've got the Marxist view, which apparently the other candidates have, where you see that you've got to be able to keep a separation between truth and the schools in a way. And so and then you can't. And if you've got a belief in secular humanism, that means atheism, and you treat history differently if you're a postmodern. And so that's one aspect to it. Maybe that answered it enough, but there's probably more to say.
So how do you feel like they should be implemented into the schools?
Yes. Okay. First of all, I was looking at the code of conduct that's the North Dakota schools use, and then comparing it with Christian ones and other ones around the country. And then I realized, it's really the Ten Commandments are the best code of ethics, code of conduct. Okay. And anything other than that is essentially leaving out truth and not teaching it to children, which is required in the North Dakota Constitution. So code of ethics would be one place to bring it in, but then every part of the curriculum, right? So if you take the K-5 reading curriculum and think of it as a, the diversity, equity, inclusion aspects, well, those are, some pieces of these bad philosophies that has to be removed. How do we know they're bad? Because it doesn't teach truth. Okay, so if it doesn't acknowledge that there is one God, that would be one problem, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, so it can be used across the curriculum to be able to understand what is right and what is wrong. So if we don't know what's good, what's evil, we can't nail it. And so I like references, some of the older catechisms elaborated on the Ten Commandments, not with words, but with the scripture references. So you can use like Westminster Confession or Luther's and look at the scriptures that they were referring to, if you don't already know, what other things like shall not commit adultery. So what other scriptures apply and could be used in the schools today and reduce the health risk survey and all the bad behavior that's going on.
Yeah. What kind of impact do you think it would have?
Thorough, totally. You'd end up changing all the curriculum. I don't know what you're going to do with all the bad curriculum because it's all bad curriculum.
You can't sell it.
Right, you have to have a burning, be a pretty big bonfire. But yeah, it has to be gotten rid of. You can't go on. I mean, people want actual change. They've got to be able to actually discern good and evil, and then get rid of the evil. And there's only one way to do that. You can't. It's pretty easy actually.
So, how will that impact test scores, which seem to be kind of a curiosity of a lot of people?
Yeah, I love the test scores. I gave away my favorite book on that topic, but John Taylor Gatto, he also wrote a book called Weapons of Mass Instruction.
Okay.
All about the test scores. He was the New York Teacher of the Year, New York State Teacher of the Year, and explains how testing that is being done with norm standards, first of all, it's comparing one with another, which is a violation of Scripture right there. So it's a violation of Ten Commandments. And therefore, can tell it's bad right without even going any further. But then it also is designed to dumb people down. I mean, the short answer testing, and then all the time that's spent on getting ready for this test, not being concerned about what's actually on the test, and that what's on the test is based on this curriculum with the DEI and everything else in it. So it's very bad. The test itself is very bad. And so then what do you do about that? Well, actually, it can be done right now. Homeschoolers and anybody can actually opt out of it. There's a form on the DPI website to opt out of the standardized testing right now. Homeschoolers have it on their statement of intent. But John Taylor Gato's idea that I always promote too is for the student to just write on the top of the test, I prefer not to take this test, and turn it in.
Okay.
Done.
That's all you got to do.
That's it.
Does it work for any test? No, I'm kidding.
No, only those standardized tests, I think. But you might get in trouble with your parents if you haven't cleared that first. But yeah, so then other countries like Finland, they laugh at the United States for taking these tests. I mean, how much wasted time and money can you get? I mean, it's terrible. It's a high stakes test, so teachers are under pressure, the schools are under pressure, all the taxpayers are looking at these tests and saying, oh, the school's doing terrible, which they might be, and tests are going down. But hey, let's look at the behind the scenes. What are we really asking in these tests? Are these tests any good? Everybody's caught up like on a, I guess you call it a red herring. It's like this fancy thing over here. Well, look at these test scores going down, 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 which is bad. But look at the stuff we're testing, and look at the procedure, and look at the dumbing down aspects. There's a lot to these tests that are not obvious, but just read Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gato and his other book on weapons of mass instruction, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
So you would suggest that we just get rid of the standardized testing altogether?
Yeah, right.
And you're using a basis that you're using is the scripture that talks about don't compare yourself one to another.
That would be one. Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the dumbing us down. I mean, you're supposed to train children up in the way they should go. It's not dumbing down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I have this question, not obviously, but I have a religious background. I'm a Christian. I have a strong Christian belief, and my belief would oppose in Christianity would oppose some others. So where does that limit come?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So the way I look at it, so I'm not trying to impose my views on anybody, but the North Dakota Constitution has already cleared that, in the sense that they're acknowledging Almighty God, bringing up morals. We had a Christian context, 10 Commandments in the public school. And so those things are a guiding ship right there. Mm-hmm. And so we had a Christian culture, and there's the rest of American history can show that as well. So even in 1776, The American Mind in 1776 is a good book, my favorite history, after looking for 30 years, points out that, many aspects of what we believe today is very different than what the Christians, everybody thought in 1776. And so, for example, what they thought in 1776 was that the state was ordained to protect people, not to provide for them. So it's like, okay, we kind of lost that somewhere along the line, right? And so that would include education. Okay. We're into it, and now the state's in charge of it, and it's like, boy, Karl Marx really did a good job too, because we're following the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto to a T.
Yeah, this has been an incredible conversation so far. We're 40 minutes into this already.
Great. Yeah, we're just winding up. I have a semester worth of topics here.
Exactly. So we're just getting warmed up for sure. No, I think that religion deal is an interesting...
Oh, I didn't quite finish answering that either.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not trying to impose my views on people, but we can bring up the history, and we can recognize that there really was a Christian history to America. When we talk about making America great again, like Trump says too, so we got to bring Christianity back. So what does he mean, or he may not know, but Christianity back means thinking a little bit more like what they thought about in 1776. And so there was a majority Christian views. The schools, public schools, started out public, not government, so they were funded, by the parents really at the very beginning, and they taught scripture. For Noah Webster, his blueback speller was used for 100, 150 years in the schools that taught the 10 Commandments, the ABCs, and the some little theology, and that was common. I mean, everybody knew that you have to have the ability to discern good and evil to have a happy and prosperous society. And so now we're in this place where we're so far down in our both morals and academics that people are waking up, I think.
Yeah. So some would say that the founders of the country or writers of the Constitution were agnostic, atheist, all that stuff, and stuff. Is that revisionist history or?
There's an effort on that, and I know there's also some Christians that are maybe doing some revising too. But that just look at the original documents is what I do, and say, there is something good about Christian history. The first book, I've got one of them in here.
Go ahead, grab it if you want to.
The first book actually published in the United States was a Psalter, which is a psalm book. How to sing psalms, kind of just rearrange a little bit so you can actually sing it. And most popular book was always the Bible, and then Webster's Speller after that. Another one in 1776 was Lex Rex, Rutherford.
Okay.
And so that was like law instead of king. So in other words, we have constitutional republic, not just the king says. Well, today we almost have the king says again, right? Because we got either the judges and the lawyers and the legislatures making the laws, so that everybody thinks what's right and wrong is based on the law. When actually there's another topic we're coming into here, which is really good too.
Lead the way.
Okay, ever heard of the doctrine of lesser magistrates?
No.
I
was homeschooled.
Okay,
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. Well, we'll get the homeschoolers caught up too. Basically, it is a doctrine. It's been around 500 years or more, or maybe like since the beginning of creation. Really, in my summary is that it is where people recognize legitimate authority and illegitimate authority. So legitimate authority is that which comes from God. Legitimate authority is authority that does not come from God. So rooted in the fifth commandment, obey your parents in the Lord. And, Luther, everybody knows it applies more than just your literal parents. And so then and they're giving out books, Truella, there's a book called Doctrine of Lesser Magistrates, Matthew Truella, he's a pastor, and they've been giving out his books on the border and all around the country to sheriffs to help them understand that they can actually take action now. They don't have to wait for the presidential election or other elections to get things done. They have to take responsibility themselves.
Okay.
So there's more to that. So then it's like, legislatures, every civil magistrate, every child, every person that's under authority or in authority can and is responsible for discerning good and evil and choosing the good. Okay, this also a little history that goes with this point is that in American history and law, it was expected that the jury would be able to both judge the facts and the law. So today, people are told just judge the facts, right? And it's like, whoa, this is a big problem because they're supposed to be able to judge the law too.
Okay.
Very big problem.
But if you say just judge the facts, that sounds good.
It does sound good, doesn't it? But then so that means if the law was bad, what would you do then? You have no choice. You have no freedom. You've lost the republic.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's the same thing at every level. If his mother says, go hit your friend over there, and then the child is responsible saying, no, that's not right. I shouldn't do that. Or then the teacher in the school, if the principal says, no, don't put up your 10 commandments, don't tell people that there is a God, don't tell them that it's authoritative. Well, that would be it would be a command or a policy that has no legitimate authority. They should disobey that. In fact, that's what Christians were known for, is defying tyrants.
So what about going and applying that to the Bible?
Yeah, you bet.
Because that would essentially be a law, right?
Let's see.
If judging, you need to judge the facts and the law, right? That was the principle.
Right.
So if you apply that to the Bible as well, because that's a basis for some of the stuff, would you be able to judge the Bible, and how would you judge the Bible? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question. Yep. The Bible is the source of truth, and so if you're judging the Bible, you're judging God. And so there's different types of apologetics that leave evidential apologetics, right? So if you're trying to defend the Bible based on there's it's the most read book in the world, it's most copies, we've got the most recent transcripts. Those are evidences. They're helpful. They're interesting, but then it leaves the person you're talking to in the place of the judge.
Okay.
And there's another type of apologetics which is better, which is the presuppositional apologetics, which is saying, okay, God is the one that's going to judge here. What His Word say is right, and we let the Word judge the facts. And
okay. So basically, what I'm kind of asking there a little bit is, if somebody's an atheist and they go to a school that is having this construct. do you feel like they will be comfortable enough in that school? How is that going to go down?
Right. Here's the way I can explain it. Of course, we care about everybody, want everybody to, be safe and secure, etc. The North Dakota Constitution got a Christian context. Okay, so if we're faithful to the North Dakota Constitution, the school system needs to have a Christian context.
Yeah.
It's not trying to push any one denomination or anything, but it's got a Christian context, or you could say ethic and such. So then the atheist could come into that system and learn, and you wouldn't be discriminated against. I mean, the idea is that this is what we teach. This is what we have. If you want to choose something else, that's fine too. But the public schools, because North Dakota's constitution and history is Christian, and there's no neutrality, we can't just say we're going to be a secular school system and then exclude the Christian, because what's happening now is, of course, the Christians are being minimized.
Do you feel that most of the people that are involved in homeschools are of Christian base?
It's a mixture, probably most, but I know even the history in homeschooling, the original folks that homeschooled were more New Age.
Okay.
Yep. And then, yeah.
Yeah, but this is a thing that I was trying to draw out. You say that, but what year? Do you have a time frame when that would be true?
I'm just remembering when I was reading the histories, but that was like in the 60s, maybe.
Okay.
60s, 70s.
So would it be fair to say that Christianity was a little more prominent in the 60s?
Yeah.
In schools?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what was going on was Christianity was prominent in schools, so people were homeschooling their kids so they could teach them something different.
Right.
And so now the script is flipping.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so, but yeah, there's a mixture though still, of Christians or non-Christians, and people really, I think more so today is people are seeing the poor academics everywhere. So then they just say, we can do better than that.
We can do better than that. Hey.
Yeah, there's one movie I was going to recommend that as far as what it looks like to have a Christian culture.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie. It's called Time Changer, the movie. And the guy that played the bald guy from the movie Love Boat, or television series Love Boat, he's the star, but it's the context is 1800s seminary. One professor has a great idea. He's going to be able to teach morals without mentioning Christ to the schools and everybody. So he writes this book. And another professor has this great idea. He has built a time machine so he could go forward for 100 years and see what happens when you start trying to teach morals without Christ.
Gotcha.
And so then it's like what we have today, basically, is what the morals are without Christ. So we have character counts, education, and all this kind of stuff. They're trying to do good things, and so I appreciate all that hard effort, but it is bankrupt. You're not going to get there. And so then the thing that I was noticing in that movie is how when the people, even the guy that wrote that book about how to do character without morals without Christ there, he was talking about, hey, God, made it rain today, or, bless the Lord, how you doing today, brother? And, speaking like a Christian in a context where nobody else was. And so it was just encouraging, really, to see that, hey, the Christian context could return if Christians were free. Like, imagine that even in the public schools.
Yeah.
The teachers could be free to think and speak like a Christian.
So you bring up a movie, something interesting. I was homeschooled. I lived in a home where we didn't have a TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't have for a long time. Yeah.
Do you think that's something that needs to return? And
well,
that's a little bit outside of public education, but it definitely is involved with public education.
Yeah, well, those kind of things, parents maybe, could be encouraged to notice the influence on their kids, right? If there's the bad influences, wherever they're coming from, need to be cut off.
Yeah, I get that that's outside the purview of your role.
We haven't talked about the DPI should decline its influence over time, right?
See, and that was my next question. What's the role of DPI that you feel?
You bet. Okay, first I have to recognize that the Marxist view of statism is that the state owns the children and is in charge of education, okay? So that's not a Christian view. Okay, North Dakota Constitution might be a little bit of a mixture on that topic, really. But but there can be a decrease in the influence of the DPI so that the more influence comes from the parents. And so we've explained a little bit of that by gathering the parents. And so over time, and I wouldn't see this happening fast, but not too slow. It might take a few months in order to move things so that the DPI influence was not negative. Because the role of the state, Romans 13, would be to encourage good and punish evil. So if we actually knew what those two things were, I can save a lot of money too.
All right. So, and then over time, 20-year outlook for the DPI, what do you see the role?
Yeah, I think the Constitution would eventually need to be changed to acknowledge that parents are in charge of the children, and that they could do a better job without a DPI, because it's not necessary unless there's some aspect that could be considered good. Encouraging good would probably a legitimate thing, and then punishing evil. But that could also be covered from the law enforcement. So I'm not sure that a DPI is actually needed.
Okay, so you would see outlook that would actually remove that office.
Yeah, well, just like the Department of Education at the federal level, 1926, J. Gresham Machen, he was the president of Princeton and then started Westminster Seminary. He presented before Joint House of Congress how the worst thing that could happen to the American education system is to have a Department of Education. And part of his reasoning was that they would be treating children like Ford cars, so that everybody's like on an assembly line. Right. You learn this in grade 1, this in grade 2, etc., and you'd lose the idiosyncrasies, was his word. Today we're criticizing all the idiosyncratic kids, especially homeschoolers, but that's really a good thing because everybody's unique and it is a great thing to do. So such an infection we have right now from Department of Education all the way down through the DPI to the bottom, and so it.
And so that brings you back to not comparing one to another, essentially. So you see a very customized outlook in school where kids are very much treated as individuals.
Yeah, that's why really the smallest schools probably had an advantage, and then closing a bunch of small schools to make a big one may not be the right direction if it's affordable not to.
So do you feel like we have enough teachers?
There'll be so many teachers you won't be able to turn them. You'll have to turn them away if you have freedom to teach and let them teach from their own convictions, and then have parents in charge so that they are really having input to what's going on in the schools. Today, the teachers are like being bullied themselves by these organizations, and so who would want to teach? The girl that works with me, she had a great point. I asked her, why do you think the teachers don't want to stay on or hard to recruit? And she says, well, the kids are not disciplined, and the teacher can't discipline the kids, and then the kids aren't paying attention, and so who wants to sit around in that environment all day long?
Okay, interesting. So it'll be easier to recruit and retain teachers, but will we need more than we currently have?
No. From what I've heard, the teacher-student ratio is plenty high right now. So we wouldn't need as many,
even with a more customized outlook for each student.
Yeah, think of the one-room schoolhouse, and so that you could have in every homeschool, really, especially the bigger families, they can teach all grades at once with one teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we're coming to the end of this thing, but we'll ask you, how does property taxes keep going up? It's a concern that I've heard too often, and I've talked about too often from this chair. Do you see that as something that needs to be affected with the school taxes that are being applied to families throughout North Dakota?
Yeah. The postmodernist view is to revise history, including the North Dakota Constitution, on property taxes.
Yeah, and so this is interesting. Okay, so finish your point.
So therefore, people say, why do we have property taxes in the first place, right? Because the North Dakota Constitution points to the legislature paying for the schools, which mean like direct from funds that the legislature works with, not from each person's property. By the way, which would be a moral problem, right? If your property gets stolen from you, that would be stealing. That's a violation of the Eighth Commandment. But there's another couple of quick points I'll try to make here too. Lean accounting, lean manufacturing, Toyota production model. If you operate any business efficiently, you're going to save 40%.
Okay.
And then therefore, if you start running the school system just with all the bad philosophies, just more efficiently, you'd save 40%. And then if you think about the philosophies that are bad and removing those, that would get rid of your social, emotional learning and just a ton of things. You've reduced the budget further. So then you're not as reliant on the property taxes or anybody's money.
But the Constitution says that we can't have the 10 Commandments.
Say that again.
The Constitution says we can't have the 10 Commandments in the schools. So, see the paradox there of.
Oh, it doesn't say that though.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, understand my point, because we go and we say that the Constitution says we can't have the 10 Commandments in the school. That's what's said.
We can.
But it's said that we can't. It's said that the Constitution says that religion can't. Okay, I'm not needing agreement. I'm just saying that's what some people say.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And then on the flip side, the Constitution talks about how taxes aren't supposed to be applied for the schools and for those property taxes, but yet that's allowed.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
I do.
So it's interesting
Schizophrenic.
It's interesting how over a period of 200 and some years now, we went from having the 10 Commandments in the schools and the Constitution being all right with that to now the Constitution says that's not allowed, but the taxes part is allowed.
Right. Yeah. So that's really, I think, a lot due to the strategic removal of truth and reality from the schools through these philosophies.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting for sure. Well, we're coming to an end. So June 11th is going to be a big day for you.
Right. Yeah.
Why should someone vote for you?
If you want to return reality to the public schools, truth, and improve the test scores and bring peace and harmony back to the schools instead of the confusion that we have, we've got to address those basic philosophies. And otherwise, we're just going to be picking off the apples off the tree, not dealing with the root, and the problem will come back. So we got to have somebody that's going to nail these philosophies right to the wall and get rid of the people and the philosophies as well as the curriculum that's bringing this through. And I've been studying this for 30 years, and I teach the Sunday schools on this all the time, so it's super easy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If someone wants to support you or learn more about you, what's the best place for them to go?
I have a website, the Bartlett, BARTLETT-SPI, like Superintendent of Public Instruction.org, and that would be the main place, and then get involved any way you can.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This has been another edition of the Dakotans Election Central, where we are continuing our comprehensive coverage of the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. I'm Jonathan Starr. Be sure to go to mydakota.com, click Election Central. There you'll be able to see other interviews just like the one you just watched, and just be in the know for what's going on this political season. June 11th is going to be a big day. That's primary day. Make sure you get out and vote. But also we'll be doing some live coverage of the results, so that's something you'll want to tune in for. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, like and subscribe on YouTube, become part of the Dakotan community. Thank you and have a great day.